paternal love. So men between brothers is actually men between men has a fatherly aspect to it, where we challenge each other, we lift up each other, we see each other, we have high expectations of each other, and we trust each other to, it's like, hey, my son, you've got this. Hey, bro, you've got this. You can do it.
All right, guys, we hit the top of the hour. So we're gonna start. So I want to start with a question, guys. What is the symbol, a visual symbol of masculinity? Paul, can you make me? Oh yeah, I can share my screen now.
Yeah.
This.
So this is probably the most known symbols of masculinity and femininity, right?
That's what you mean. Mm-hmm.
The one on the right side usually symbolizes masculinity, and so both of them have the circle, which is the common part between men and women. It's being human, but the masculine part has an arrow, and an arrow is a symbol of a direction or a movement or aim, heading somewhere. And you might think that that's what being a man is. It's about movement and striving towards, and it's the arrow is pointing forward and upward. So that's the direction where we as men develop. But the movement part is interesting because in a way you might say that being a man is about becoming, that you are never fully a man. There's always more of a man that you can be, and which with each decision that you make and each challenge that you overcome and each action that you take, you become more of a man. But you might ask yourself, where is the arrow pointing? Like, what is the direction? What is the vision? And to answer that question, you first need to know who you are. You need to know who you are in order to know where you're going. So I would like to start first with the who are you question, but it is a rather big question, like where to start trying to answer it. You can approach this question from many different angles. You can say, like, I am a man, or I am Polish, or I can describe you how I look like, or what do I do. So it's a very generic and wide question. So in order to find an answer, we have to start somewhere, and it's the best to start in the beginning, so in the roots. So where do we come from? So each of us came to this world from parents, from a mother and a father. So that's the basic of our identity, and especially the father played a role, because we as men, when we were 2 or 3, we recognized that we are men and we are more like the father than like the mother, and we wanted to be like him. And when we were 3, our psyche was the most moldable, so it made a huge imprint or an impact on us, that we wanted to be like the father. So to start to build your identity, you might think, like, who is my father, or who was, if he's deceased, and what are his beliefs and what are his values. And that doesn't mean that you have to be like your father. So if my father was a carpenter, I have to be a carpenter, or if he was a soldier, I have to be a soldier. But that's just your starting point. That's just the foundation of who you are, or who are you becoming. And you might also think of not only your father, but also your grandfathers, your forefathers, and your uncles. Like, where do you come from? So one part of the basic of your identity is the roots, and the other is the culture. So it's the surroundings, it's the people around you. And nowadays, many people say that identity is a subjective, arbitrary thing. Like, I say that I'm this, and you guys have to accept that that's what I am. But actually, identity is being negotiated with the surrounding. So if I say that I'm French, you would guys ask me like, hey, do you speak French? And I would say like, no, I don't. And you would say, okay, but your parents are French, right? And I would say, no, they're not. Okay, but you live in France, right? No, I don't. Come on, you're not French, right? You have to. So the identity is a combination of what I feel and think I am, and what the surroundings think about me and who they think I am. So that's the first building like two parts of the foundation of who we are. And then we can on top of that we can build our identity and ask ourselves like, what is the purpose of our lives, or what is the purpose of my life? And I will share the screen here again. So there's this is a little more practical part of it, of the presentation. There is this model of building your identity and your vision. So we start at the bottom with the roots. So that's what I just said about your forefathers and the culture that you come from, and that is fixed. So that's, you don't have an influence on that part. You may live in a like you might try to reject, if your father, especially if your father was abusive, for example, you might want to reject him. But then you can also ask yourself a question: is it better for a tree to have rotten or maybe weak roots, or no roots? I think it's better even if they are not very good, but still have some roots. It's making the tree stronger. So these are the two basic things: roots, the culture, and the forefathers. And then there are very basic parts of your life that you can align in order to build a vision. And the first part I want to start is the job and / education. So we need to be financially independent to have level of freedom to create our lives and become our full potential. And if you are in your 20s, I would say it's fair enough if you are not financially independent. But anything after that, it's like, that's the first part that you have to start. If that's not in order, if you live with your parents and you are in your 30s, that's the first thing that you start with, building your vision and pulling your life forward. And even if you are in your 20s and you are still at the university, perhaps it's good to find a job and get some financial stability on your own. Unless you are the best student in your group, then probably you have some time to do some evening jobs. The second part of the very basics is the practices. So it's your personal development. It might be your prayers, your workouts, meditations, whatever. Like if you have a job established, you still should increase your competences and develop your skills and develop spiritually. And the third part is the free time. So nowadays, most of us, I imagine, and most of the people in contemporary society are scrolling a lot through Facebook and have a lot of addictions. Pornography is a big thing, mostly among young men. So the suggestion is like to think about how I spend my free time and consciously plan it. And the things that might come up is like martial arts is a very good way to spend your free time, and it builds also confidence and teaches you how to overcome challenges. But also hiking, singing. I can recommend dancing, like with a partner, with a woman. It also teaches you how to lead a woman, and it's also very enjoyable. So that's the third basic block. And if you have those three in more or less, at least intact, then you can follow to straighten the relationships with your family and friends. And with the family, I mean your parents, your siblings, mostly your parents. That's usually the most difficult relationships. And I don't feel very competent to tell you how to do it, but for me, the like a marking point of a healthy relationship with the parents is like if you can hang out with your parents for like extended time and you are not very triggered and you can spend time with them and enjoy it, then I think that's pretty good. But if you cannot, then I guess it needs therapy or like professional help. I don't feel like competent to guide you in that realm. But when it comes to friends, I think it's a little easier. A lot of us, myself included, had years of like mostly drinking with friends, which was like that was a default thing that we would do. And I would say that it's if that's your case, it's good to inspire the guys and say like, hey guys, let's go for a hike instead of drinking and take them out of this bubble. I think it's very often this circle of guys who drink together, it's just lacking ideas or a leader who would suggest something else. So it's just like a kind of perpetuate habit of just drinking and watching sports. But it is important to keep peers and friends, because from my experience, they allow me to balance both my insecurities and my pride. So whenever I meet my friends, especially the old guys that I know for years, I can see that whatever I feel insecure about, I see like, oh, they are also maybe insecure about that, or maybe they also are not, like they are in the same place in a way. And whenever I'm like too proud of myself, I can see also that, oh, but they also have some other virtues or some other things developed better than me. So it teaches me humility. And yeah, and then there's at the top of the pyramid, or almost at the top, the second layer, there's intimate relationship and children. It's obviously not a necessity. I think that the bottom part is like a necessity for each of us. Intimate relationship with children, if you decide to go ascetic, for example, you don't have that part. I myself also don't have children, and I just broke up with my girlfriend, so I also don't have an intimate relationship. But I believe that they are the building blocks. These are the people that you spend the most time with, or like they will go through your life till the end. So it's very important to have your intimate relationship and care for the intimacy and nurture it, and also bring up your children so they can one day stand up for themselves. And I also believe that they are the relationships that can bring you the most fulfillment in the long run if you straighten them up. So these are all the building blocks, and at the very top there's the eye. So what is the eye? And the eye symbolizes vision, right? Like we see through the eyes. And it also symbolizes God in a way. God's, what is, I'm lacking the English word. But yeah, it symbolizes vision or God, or it might be also just the biggest virtue that you want to build your life around. It might be truth. It might be beauty. It might be love. If a lot of us might think like, yeah, I speak truth, I don't lie. But there are big lies and there are small lies. And of course, a big lie is like, I've done something and somebody asked me like, hey, did you do it? And I would say like, no, I didn't. Then of course, it's a big lie. It's like straightforward. But there are also some smaller lies, like making myself small in front of others to get their approval, or like that they like me, or maybe make myself big and like a little bit overstate my achievements to impress somebody. And I believe all of us do it to a certain extent. And so you can also dedicate your life towards truth and be more of a truth speaker. So the question is like, what is at the top of the pyramid for you? Yeah, what's the ultimate goal? What's the direction of your life? And we might build the pyramid from the top down to the bottom, and first find the what is the I in our lives, and align all the elements up to it. Or if we don't know, then we can build from bottom up. We can start with the simplest building blocks of our lives in order to find out what is at the top. And I believe that those two approaches are not mutually exclusive. We iterate. The more we make balance out of each of the blocks, the clearer the I becomes. The clearer the I becomes, the more it nurtures the pieces in the bottom. And so yeah, the question for us guys is like that. I prepared two questions. One is more abstract, and the second one is a little more practical. And because it's 9 of us, maybe we can split in two and make two subgroups, or what you call them, breakout rooms, and ponder on that. But before that, what are your comments, guys? What are the questions for the presentation?
I'll just say I thought it was an excellent presentation, Paulo. I really appreciate the kind of structure and framework for thinking about this problem. I think it seems very valuable. And then the insight that I had listening to you was just that for myself, I like that you had the I at the top, and while there's an EYEI, then I think a lot of us, like the default for our culture, and also just it's so unavoidable, I think, for all of humankind, is that there's an I, as in like just the letter I, like me, up at the top there, right? And so we create the idol of the self, or the ego, and we put that up there, and it becomes about the selfish realization of all the things that I think that I need in order to make myself happy and get the most pleasure and enjoyment out of my life. And then wiser men than myself have found that, and I'm starting to realize this, how this isn't a long-term productive strategy. And that's something that I think is only, it comes like, I think when you're young, like you kind of, it's just, you have to put yourself up there. That, at least that's what I had all the people telling me, like, don't do that. And I still did it. Right. And I'm starting to really know in a deeper sense that that's not worth dedicating my life to. But I still think 90% of the time, I'm probably using my energy and my efforts on pleasing and confirming and building up the I of myself. It's so hard to remember those kind of higher ideals of truth and love and beauty and things like that, even though we talk about them all of the time. But I think that men are in this community because they realize there's something about that. And so it's something we can also use our friendships with, our family with, to remind each other about like something greater there, aware that like 90%, most of the time we're going to be in the selfish mode of being as well. And like, that's just the way it is. And we don't have to like beat ourselves up about that. But we need to find synergies of working with ourselves, with our own ego, and helping ourselves to be like following. I really like the way you had that arrow pointing, like, like we're heading to somewhere higher. We don't really know what's up there, but we're going that direction.
Yeah, I think that is very often the case when you don't think about what is at the top of the pyramid. That's where you put yourself in. Like, but I think that asking yourself what is there is the first step to put yourself out of the top of the pyramid. Do you guys have some further questions or comments?
I think, Bolo, quite interestingly, just as you sort of were drawing that picture, that you can sort of land at some sort of vision at the top just by happenstance, by allowing all those other areas to sort of have inputs and give direction in your life in an uncontrolled way. So where you end up in terms of what your vision is at the top can be heavily influenced by how you allow your roots to affect you, and the importance those roots may play in a positive and a negative sense, and then your various relationships, your work, the situation in terms of your intimate relationships and children and family, all of those can have an uninformed or undirected effect upon you that leads you to the sort of the top of the pyramid, and you sort of find yourself in a place living out a vision and a reality that you haven't had too much control over or haven't structured in any particular way. But if you do have a top-down view, if you do know where you want to be, you can't sort of have any control, as you said, over your roots, but what you put your time into in terms of your job and what kind of skills you want, the type of friends you have and friendships you build, the wife you choose and the family you create, that can all sort of then come to this ultimate grander vision that has real purpose and meaning at the end of the day, rather than sort of just bumbling along and suddenly finding yourself one day in a place with a vision that wasn't really your vision, with a purpose that really wasn't your purpose. And your life really seems then quite meaningless. And I think many men who sort of hit that midlife crisis are men that have allowed sort of everything to just sort of lead them where they didn't really ever want to go, because they never thought about what ultimately the ultimate goal is, where you want to be at the top of that pyramid.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like a lot of men would point the arrow at vain making money or like sleeping with tons of women, and then you're right. They face one day that it was not worth it, or that they wasted their time.
I think like building it up from the bottom to the top really makes you like sort of a victim of your roots when you don't have a clue at all what is on the top. So when you have an idea what your top position is, then you can use your roots to go there. When you don't have a clue, then your roots are like, well, my parents did this and that, and that's why I'm developing like this, and you tend to blame somebody for your whole life. In fact, when you don't have a top thing that's worth living.
I'd like to mention the opposite problem, because I think through most of my life I've had quite strong purpose, and looking back, it's been quite meaningless. Even though those purposes have been altruistic and outside of myself and towards a higher vision, the problem is they haven't come along with the normal everyday goods of human connection and especially human connection and this kind of thing. So I've kind of pursued grand altruistic purposes, but they've actually left me with very little kind of goodness in life. So I think there's kind of a danger there. And yeah, I definitely find the talk of purpose in manifesto slightly confusing and off-putting, because that's when I think of purpose, I think of like a really stressful thing that leads to you being alone, rather than something like that's very kind of rich.
I'm not sure if I fully understand. You say that you had the altruistic purpose, and pursuing it and achieving maybe some goals there didn't give you the fulfillment that you were looking for.
Yeah, exactly.
And what would be the missing part, or like why the fulfillment didn't follow?
Because the kind of goals I was pursuing were quite kind of large and abstract, and so I didn't have much like feeling of connection. I couldn't see the impact of what I was doing. It wasn't connecting me to other people very well, and it was also causing a lot of stress. So like,
I heard Richard saying like he was relying too much on a top-down model. Yeah. And then you said, Richard, do you feel that that's what we do in Manifesto, is that when we talk about purpose, we're also too much top-down and not enough bottoms-up?
Not necessarily. I think it's just I have some confusion about the word because of my and some reluctance about the word, because it makes me think of these kinds of purposes.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think you are doing that when you talk about it, but
It's a hard
just-
balance, right? I don't think we've got it completely right. I'm sure we don't. But
Mm.
I think it's great that you and Stefan brought up these two excesses from each direction. That was incredibly insightful for me to see that and hear that.
And what you were, Stefan, saying is that when you rely too much on the bottom up, that you might go astray, or was that what you were saying?
No, that you might blame others for your outcome, that you might not feel responsible for the way you go. That's the people running around and destroying others just because they have the power to, and blame their parents for it because they brought them up in a unhealthy way or something. They are not responsible for their own actions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I need a certain point or vision where I'm heading for. Otherwise, I'm sort of lost in the parts that you announced in between the bottom and the top.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like Richard said, when you're in a sort of weak position and you set yourself too high goals and try to try to reach these goals and help others while you're weak yourself, it's hard to help somebody when you need help yourself. So when you have a strong foundation, then you can give to others. When you lack yourself, then you can't really give. And then having that top down situation, then you get lost in helping others, and you lose yourself while doing that, maybe.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I think you're right. So for me, it seems like the solution is to do both at the same time, or like both top down and bottoms up, and so they fuel each other, or like they, yeah.
I think this is where the way that religions do it is a little better, because you have this high ideal in a religion, but you do it through the small pieces of your own life rather than being like, whereas in activism or charity work, this kind of stuff, it's like, oh, I have to solve all these huge problems in the world. Whereas in a religion, you can be more like, well, through building these, a family or a friendship or spiritual practice, that is part of this massive vision. So it kind of gets both at once without overwhelming you with the massive vision.
Mm. Yeah, it seems like the religions are like having a complex approach, and they both have the ideals and the abstract ideas, and the groundwork, like practice and be good to cherish your parents and all these things.
And the idea that through doing the small actions in your life, that is actually the way that you connect to the big vision. You don't have to do everything.
Mm. All right, guys, I think we can break up to groups. Yeah.
I want to say also that I think if you're only on the first and second level, you can set some temporary goals, and if I'm talking with friends, with parents, I can set up some temporary to reach a financial independence or something like that. But to get this vision, which is on the top level, I think it's very important to reconnect with roots, because I even think that it's impossible to have a real value vision without reconnection with roots. So what I mean is to look at your grandparents, where they ended their lives, what values left to the end of their lives, because they also were in the same messy situation during their lives. They didn't know maybe what to do, but when they came to the end of their lives, something valuable, they kept something valuable with them. So I think at some point anyone we'll need to look back in the history of your family to see what happened and how they lived, and this, I think, is necessary to build your own vision, really truly vision, yeah, which is valuable for all your life, yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I think like it's in your bloodstream, like it penetrates, like what your roots are. It penetrates you in a way that you are not even aware of, like the thing that, you know, when we were small children, what my father was doing, like it formed me in so many ways, on so many different levels, that I cannot even really grasp it. And it's so much of who I am today.
I don't know if you all know that I'm a gardener, but I can tell you something from the plant's life. And there is these fruit trees, and usually you put a seed into the ground, and then a very strong roots built, and a very strong base for the new tree is built, and then in the 60s, people came up with the idea of building trees out of branches. So they like put the branch, somehow made it build roots and put it into the soil, and then the branches grew, and they had fruit like after 2 years, whereas the one from the seed takes 7-8 years to build fruit. But these branches trees, they are completely unstable. They never have solid roots, and they have to have a stick nearby to stand straight. Otherwise, they will just fall apart. And they also don't live that long. They live like less than half the life of a very strong tree built out of a seed. So that's what Danny said, that it's very important to not deny or miss the grounding that you have from your ancestors. Yeah,
absolutely.
Can I just add a little thing from like that I've just been nerding with recently? Some of you know I've been reading a lot in this book here, which is called Beowulf. It's a very ancient story, probably the oldest story we have. It's a poem, actually, 3,000 lines in Old English, and it's a Viking story written about the king of Denmark inviting a warrior, or a warrior coming to the king of Denmark to kill a monster. And it writes together the depths of the history of kind of Scandinavian Viking culture the story was written by a Christian monk, and so it kind of weaves these things together. And I think there's a element of our culture that's been forgotten in kind of like the Reformation and the kind of Puritan Christianity that's taken over in much of Western Europe. And that's like the wildness of our ancestors as well. So that's obviously far further down than just your grandparents. Probably looking at your grandparents, if you do that really well, that's enough. But there's also an aspect like, back in the mists of time, this story, the poem's probably from the year 600, something like that. It's very discussed when it's from. But there's also something there that's really powerful and interesting.
Yeah, that's like a broader culture, right? Like that brings us up, not only our ancestors, but the whole society influences us, also our perspectives and values.
Yeah, the thing that I always wonder, like when I come to Scandinavia, it's like, what happened to the Vikings? Like, where are the Vikings gone to? Like, all these like guys are gone, like the greatest warriors of the world, right? And now it's just like all these sweet, gentle, nice men who are so sweet and kind.
Viggo or Lars, would you like to comment? What are you sitting with?
I was having some thoughts about building from the top to the bottom, of like you know, the ideal being unrealistic, and that being a problem. But I'm not so, because I had another thought of like, because in at least in the core integration program, you always built from the top, you built smaller habits. So I don't know how unrealistic it could be. I don't know, because I have problems with my visions being like, not really something that I actually want to do. But I think that's just an immaturity thing, since I'm 21 years old.
But you say that is a problem, that the vision is unrealistic?
I think when you don't ground it in like what's it called? The base? I don't know.
Yeah, the roots.
The
Yeah.
roots. I think it's like how the tree that like blossoms quickly is also unstable. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like we can also distinguish like the vision, the vision like as a sort of a plan for your life, like where you want to be in 3 to 5 years, and that should be attainable. Like you should measure, you know, like it should be feasible and ambitious, of course. But then there's it's sort of the eye that was in the, it should be something that you constantly aspire to. So it should be in a way unattainable. So it's like inexhaustible in that way.
Can I build a little bit on Stefan's metaphor? Because I really liked it about like the grafted branch that became a tree. Because I think why do we create trees like this, right? We create them because we want them to be as productive and give as much fruit as we possibly can, so we can sell the fruit and make a whole lot of money. And so that's why we go for like this quick fix, short process, and we don't really care about the roots. We try and create some supportive structures that can kind of hold things in place for as long as possible, and we're getting get the maximum payoff. And I think that what happens is, if you're as a man, don't create your vision based on your own roots, is that what happens is you create a vision based on what's in the culture. And so I'm sorry to say it, but when I see guys who their vision is to like solve climate change and, you know, just like deal with all like the big, whatever it is that newspapers and the media is talking about, for me, it's quite clear that these men are more motivated by the culture than by their own roots. And it's certainly my own life looked like that as well. I worked as an environmental sustainability specialist for 8 years in a big corporate company. So the culture was what was informing my vision. What does the culture want? Well, it wants me to be a productive, money-making part of society that can contribute as much as I want, but I need the support. Often my support was like, you know, like either getting drunk or watching pornography or whatever it is. Like I needed all these supports to actually hold my life together, and I only lasted for half a life. Just like Stefan said, the tree only lasts for half the time, right? So it lasted for half my life, but then everything kind of got knocked over the first time a serious wind came and blew at me as well. And so if we want to be a man that wants to last for a whole lifetime and not see like your life work disintegrating in your midlife crisis, you need to really focus as early as you can on getting those roots as deep as possible. I think it's a great point that Stefan came up with. Culture it's just looking to use you.
Can I pick up on that in a little sense, in the sense that our culture and our society at the moment, there's two sort of main problems when it comes to trying to establish a vision. And the first thing is that we're in a sort of an instant results type of culture. You just want to add water and stir, and then the result is there. And the other is distraction. We're caught by so many different things, and we're focusing on too many things, and there's lots of interesting things to get hold of, that at the end of the day, we don't understand that the top of the pyramid is a process that is realized over time. So it takes investment, but it also means we need to think really hard about what that end game is. And is it sort of being the top of my career? Is it simply sort of having done all the things that the culture expects from me to have done and to have accomplished, to sort of say I've succeeded? And I always sort of pick up on this, that when you meet someone new, often the very first thing they ask you is, what do you do? And that instantly tells them, if you say, well, you know, I'm a physicist, or I'm a doctor, or I'm a professor, or I fix trucks, it instantly tells that other person where you are in the structure, the social hierarchy. how important you are then to them, and how successful you are. So we're consistently measuring success. And so inculcated in that is that, well, when I look at that top of the pyramid, what does success look like for me? And I don't think that is really a valid point to press to. I really should be looking at what type of person, and ultimately for us, what kind of man do I want to be? And then everything else feeds into that over time. So where I start, my roots and my culture and all those things that feed into that could make me a money-grubbing, ruthless achiever who gets what he wants at all costs. And when I do that, am I a success? Have I reached what I want? And when I do, am I happy with that? And the answer 99.9% of the time is no. You can look at all these big successful people, and every day they wake up and they do the same thing. They're still pursuing what they thought they had. And so at the end of the day, I need to realize that there is this process. Who am I going to be? What does that look like? And I need to realize that it's getting there is by being part of a bigger whole. So vision, and my vision can't just be me. I think, Paul, you really touched on that nicely, and the big I. And so I've got to get there by being a smaller part of a greater whole, because not all of us are going to solve climate change. Not all of us are going to find a cure for cancer. Not all of us are going to discover the next new piece of tech or the next new piece of software. But we can do big things if we play a smaller part in a greater whole that brings us all together in some point to this better man, to this better person, to this better community, to this better family.
I think there's something there that's important you say about character and what kind of man you want to be. Because I think in some ways it's easy to see the route towards just making money as the wrong route. But then I think I got ensnared by the route towards altruism as being the right route. And I think the problem with both of those routes is that they're incomplete. Because if you obsess about altruism, there's whole chunks of your life that are missing. If you obsess about success, there's whole chunks of your life that are missing. Even if you obsess about having a family, like if that's the only thing, then there's something missing. So it's sort of you need a vision of a very holistic vision, or maybe like a vague vision, like one that's not so pinned down that you end up cutting out parts of yourself in order to fulfill it.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. You actually answered my question I was trying to formulate. How to avoid being this, to get this neurotic narcissism, just like you said, I'm going to solve this big thing. I'm going to be this great man. Kind of, yeah. Then you look at yourself and you realize you're pretty fucked up. How are we going to change the whole world?
But at the same time, I believe that we have the potential to be great. That if we align all those pieces and work on ourselves through decades, we can become like really influential, and we can, like there are examples, right, like of great men and also women who did change the course of history, and so it is possible, right?
Absolutely. But it means that you need to be ambitious. So I think that's something that I hadn't really realized until we started having this conversation, is that you actually need to have some ambition. You've got to want to get to that level. So ambition is actually an important motivator.
It was really an insight for me seeing that arrow on the masculinity symbol. I had never thought about it in that way. It's like like that's what a man does. He constantly drives in that direction. That's why everybody's, that symbol isn't just random. It's not like arbitrary that's the symbol that we use for masculinity. That's because, 10,000 years of men, that it's a universal way of showing the masculine being. And yeah. And I think that it just becomes dysfunctional when we deny that part of ourselves. Again, it's like it's cutting off the roots if we say, oh no, now we're not going to be ambitious. Now we're just going to be, be in the moment or something like that. Like, yeah, great to be in the moment, but we're also going to be ambitious sometimes. And so direct our ambition towards things that are good for me in a way that's good for others, in a way that's good for society. Be strategic about it in everything that I do.
I guess an important thing to have that direction is to start where I can really have an impact, and not to deal with problems on the other end of the world and moan about it and not being able to do anything about it, or gluing myself to a street and wanting to have some impact with that. It doesn't matter what I do when the problem is out of reach for me. I cannot solve it. And I have to start right in front of my door, and there's plenty of good things to do. And when I go from there, then I am really able to achieve something and to have some impact on the world, in a positive way. When I start with problems out of my reach, I will never have any impact.
Yeah, I think we have to start small and build from there. Because if you cannot, get your household together, like why would you be able to change the country, or fix anything if you cannot fix your own life? So you have to, of course, walk your talk.
Maybe one issue is that there's not very good institutions for young people and young men to kind of enter and start building their, because you want to sort of start small with your capabilities, and as your capabilities grow, you can do more and more. But there isn't really there aren't many places in society where you can actually do that. So you either sort of just follow a very default careerist path, or you go straight into activism or this kind of thing. And there's just not a good way of providing that path for people.
Yeah, I think the vital element for me still today is like being around other guys who are following the same path. It's like it's so hard to find leaders or father figures or grandfather figures in this. So what I've really been relying on is brothers who can each add a little part of the puzzle. It's slower and it's a little bit more full of hassle, and it's really hard. I'm living in a town with 300 guys on an island in the middle of Denmark, which is famous for being like really chill and relaxed and unambitious. And so I really thrive on like, I need other ambitious men around me. Otherwise I feel like I'm dying, right? And that's what I live off, is with guys who really want to live life very, very fully and give everything that they have to life and let life take them, their life out of them somehow, right? And so yeah, I it's a struggle with me all the time, and I think that I have to build it slowly, and so I really appreciate having this community here, and I think that's one of the things that I really want to infuse more in this community as well. It's like, we men, we strive, we lead, we build, and we don't always do it perfectly, but we create space for each other to learn and to support each other, to have higher expectations from each other, to be improving. It's like we might not be perfect now, but we don't give up because of that.
The lost place of mentors in our lives as men, I think that's something that also will help us come to a more tangible vision at the top of the pyramid, is to see men that inspire us, and then to engage with them in a way that helps us get to where they are, and sort of make manifest or physical the qualities that we see in them that we want to have in our own lives.
I have a quick question about mentors. How do you know if your mentor is good? Maybe that's a person who put money at the top of their value, got there, and now you only see this person, he's done perhaps awful things to get there, but he has got there where you want to be. How would you know as a young person if that mentor is not completely bonkers?
I think that you can, like first you choose your mentors carefully, and then like if you realize that your mentor was not the good one, then you drop it, no, or you challenge him on it, and if he understands, then great, and if not, then you find yourself another one. But I think like that, you look for mentors for mentors in specific areas that you want to develop, right? So you want to learn how to, I don't know, work with wood. So you find a guy who works with wood, and that's what you learn from him. And maybe he cheats on his wife, but like you are not taking lessons on how to build a marriage from him, but you're learning this particular skill that that he owns.
I would say have lots of mentors, and then I would also say, like, I think Bolo's right, but it's also like there's a way in which, like, just being around someone and receiving input from someone in your life, their person is going to be influencing you as well. So I'd say never put your mentors up on a pedestal, but ask them critical questions when you see something you don't like, because I think both of you can learn more from it, and it would actually help the mentor as well to benefit from the relationship if you challenge him. If you see something that you think looks strange, then you ask about that. So use your discernment with your mentor as well. Have lots of them. And then, if you're so lucky to meet a person that you rarely see as a life mentor, that can even be a kind of spiritual father for you, then sometimes you put your faith in that. And I think that's a beautiful thing to do, that to put your faith in a father figure for you. But it's difficult. And I've hurt myself more that way by doing that than I've benefited from it so far. But I also haven't given up hope about finding that kind of spiritual fatherhood in another man. But yeah, so I think one can discern between that, but putting your faith in a mentor is a big step, and it's better to ask critical questions to start off with, at least.
I recently elaborated with finding a mentor, and I found out that it's that there is mentors for even only tiny aspects of my life, and when I really ask them for information and for their knowledge, then they blossom in a way, and I don't have to like any of their other character issues, but I'm really worshiping them for that one thing, and that's what I give them. I tell them that they are brilliant in that, and that I want to learn from them, and that's the important connection. And I don't like you said, it's not important to, when somebody's a good drummer, to learn from him about relationships or something. It's just about drumming, and then I can give him that. Yesterday I had a first drumming lesson, and the drummer, he's a man about 70 years old, and he's rather fat, and he's looks rather unhealthy, and so there's nothing I want to learn from him in these aspects, but he's a godlike drummer, so I gave him that, and gave him his brilliance in that aspect, and that made him feel super good and made me feel super good, and I don't want to know about his eating habits, not at all. So I won't
But
ask him
that's
to-
also like, then you're in a brotherly relationship with him, where you're also building up that man by recognizing his talents and helping him to be seen. And so you're actually also playing a fatherly role for him there by appreciating and seeing him, right? And so that's where when Father Hans makes this point all the time, which I think is relevant, is that he talks about paternal love. So men between brothers is actually, men between men has a fatherly aspect to it, where we challenge each other, we lift up each other, we see each other, we have high expectations of each other, and we trust each other to, it's like, hey, my son, you've got this. Hey, bro, you've got this. You can do it. You know, even if the guy himself is a little bit unsure, it's like, no, you've got this. You've got it. And then if he fails, then you say, well, that was a good effort. Let's do it again. You know, so we're constantly pouring our love into each other as men. And that's where this, you know, so if a guy, you know, we all have areas that we shine, and then we have areas that we're struggling with, and so this is the brotherly relationship that we can have, and we're building up each other, and we should preferably be doing that with all the men around us. We're building up the areas, recognizing for what they're good at. Sometimes not, you know, we definitely want to be putting them down for the things that they're bad at, but we are, you know, slowly, to the extent that they can take it, helping them to become more aware of their shortcomings, to the extent that, you know, it's productive.
Hmm. But Stefan, is the relationship like that? Like that it's also that you're paternal to him in some way?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. We from that what I gave him, we came into a discussion, and I told him about my work and how I create beauty, and he's a very sensitive man, and he although he doesn't look like, and I gave him some of my sensitivity in my work, and that's what he really appreciated to get from me. So it's in both directions, and it's not dependent on age or something, that it's always you are younger, so the older one is the mentor. That's not the truth. It can be any direction, and you also have to give something at any time of life. So it's always both directions.
When I joined the military, I just see like it's like just constantly men trying to show value to each other, and very few recognizing value from others. So it's just like it ends up getting like tedious a little bit sometimes, because these guys are constantly trying to show how they know something better or have some special insight and impress each other, but no one's actually recognizing the efforts that the other guys are doing as well, and then it just becomes destructive. And so and then I can see how just one guy who kind of like can receive, sometimes it's about receiving, holding, seeing, appreciating. That's the fatherly role a lot of the time. And then as you do that more, then people will be trusting you more to be guiding and leading, because you naturally are in that relaxed. You don't have to prove yourself. That's the leadership fatherly role that we need men to be stepping into.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully we all step into these fatherly roles with each other and with the people around us more, and we strive towards this arrow up and forward. For me, from this meeting, there is this word ambition that stood out somehow, and I think that it was not very pronounced before in our meetings, and I like that is it came to the surface today. So that's for sure my take out from this meeting as we approach the top of the hour. Do you guys have some last comments?
Great presentation, Bolo. Really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellently done. I think Bolo came into this organization with some ambition, and he's really taken a fatherly role from me as well today. That's done a presentation better than I think I've ever done it actually on vision. So thanks, Bolo. That was excellent and really valuable. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Then thank you for coming, for showing up, and have a good weekend. And I see you around, hopefully next time on some common meeting with cross-group meeting.
Thank you.
Great.
Cheers,
Thanks,
guys.
guys. Thanks.
See you.